I will present for you about our experience and also what we are doing in ICCA Consortium about mapping with communities and indigenous peoples. First and foremost, it's the maps, as so many of you knows, are more than pieces of paper. They are stories, conversations, lives, and songs lived out in a place and are inseparable from the political and cultural context in which they are used. This is why the mapping are so important. Why it's not working? Okay, sorry. For me, maps are media in cartographic or digital formats, or as Alcorn in 2000 saying, maps communicate information immediately and convey a sense of authority. This is what mapping and preparing participatory maps are so important for the communities and also for the people that are working with the communities. Participatory mapping or community-based mapping is a general term used to define a set of approaches and techniques that combines the tools of modern cartography with participatory methods to represent the spatial knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities. This is so important when you are preparing maps. The maps are the knowledge of the communities and what it's important for their needs and for their use. That's something that you are preparing, and the products of the mapping is the needs of the communities, and according to their needs they are preparing the maps that they want. Participatory mapping is the bottom up approaches that allows the masses to create maps for all, in contrast to the traditional top-down approaches that, for example, the government or some corporations, they have their own maps and they are bringing their maps and they are saying that we want to have some factories or something in this area. But in this bottom-up approach, this is the communities that have their own maps and they are showing that and they are express their interest about their territories and what they want. Maps created by indigenous peoples and local communities represent the place in which they live, showing those elements that communities themselves perceive as important, such as customary land boundaries, traditional natural resources management practices, sacred sites, and so on. You can see in this picture that the women and children, they are doing mapping, participatory mapping, and this is something that when you want to do mapping, all the communities members, such as men, women, elders, children, should participate in preparing maps. This is a very important experience with us in doing mapping. When we are preparing some maps that many people in the community are engaged in preparing maps, and these type of maps are more accessible and are more formal for the community when lots of people have their own experience, have their own geographical understanding, and have their own confidence about doing mapping in their territory or different aspects of the territory that we can do mapping about them. And we should know that when so many people are engaged in preparing mapping, it's become more time needs to prepare maps, and also people are getting involved better and with more interest. In this maps, you can see this is one of our experience when we were doing mapping in separate groups, in men and women groups, and their experience about and their understanding, geographical understanding of their territories in the mapping. You can see here for men group, as you know, the symbols that we are using to prepare maps are points, lines, and polygons. And this makes some importance for preparing maps because, for example, when someone says that something in the territory or in the ecosystem as a point and some other saying as a polygon, this means that the importance of the area is important when it is in polygon. You can see here for men group, when they are talking about the places that they can gather or collecting medicinal plants or industrial plants in their territory, they are mentioning it as a point. But for women group, you can see they are mentioning it as a polygon. This shows that how this area is important more for women than men. Or for some wintering grounds or summering grounds, this is important for men group, and they are mentioning it on the map as a polygons, but for women it's as a point. These are something that makes the maps more visible and also make it more tangible, because when you are seeing these maps, you can see the vision and also the perspective of different groups in the community, and you can see that how community are using wisely from all parts of their territory. This territory is located in the central desert of Iran, and you can see when you are working with different groups in the community, you can have the better information and better knowledge of the maps from the communities. When we are talking about PGIS or Participatory Geographic Information System, what's that and what's the difference between PMapping and also PGIS? PGIS is a spatial information technologies, including geographic information systems, global positioning system or GPS, remote sensing software, and open access to spatial data and imagery, empower those who command them. This is something that the difference between PGIS and PMapping. In so many cases, the PGIS is much more geographical in the geo-referenced maps, and the PMapping, in so many cases, you can use it and without using the for example, the geographic coordination system or something like that. But in PGIS, this is important that you have the geo-referenced maps. The methods that we are using to do mapping are, one of them is the basic one, is the ground mapping. It depends on the different communities. Some of the communities are more familiar with technology, more familiar with doing mapping, and also maybe they have some problem and they want to do that. They are asking someone, some facilitator, to do mapping in their territories and also mapping for their problems. But for some of the communities, they are not so familiar, and also it's so difficult for them to bring their knowledge to the papers. So we can start with ground mapping. This is something like a mental mapping. You are bringing the mind of the people and communities to the ground. You can see it in this picture. This is the method that so many people are using around the world for doing mapping. And then you can use this ground mapping, bring it to the sketch paper, to the blank paper, and having mapping on the paper. This is something that you can have document on it and use it after, and maybe you can geo-reference it later on. Also, after that, we can do the scale mapping. This type of mapping is something that you can print some topographic maps or some satellite images or some road maps or something like that, and you can use it to do participatory mapping. This is the way, another way that you can use the participatory mapping. Another method is 3D model mapping. This model is so useful most of the time for advocacy because it is so visible and so many people in the community are engaged to prepare this type of 3D maps. And also it takes time, but when you have a very big territory or the ICCA is so huge in the area, it's not so easy to prepare the 3D model, and you should think about the other methods. When we are talking about geo-referenced mapping, as I mentioned, it's a Google Earth with the help of Google Earth, GPS, satellite images, or drone photogrammetry. The Google Earth is the very visible for the communities, and also you can show the valleys, you can show the mountains, you can show the roads, and also rivers, lakes, or everything in the maps for the community. And this is something that people can make so familiar with the technology, and brings the bird view from their territory to the geo-reference view and the land view. And also GPS that are so useful for so many communities, and also so many people that working with communities. They are using GPS and they are going around somewhere that they want, or have some points, or for checking some points that you have problem that I don't know that this area is for this community or that community. You can check your information and so on. And satellite images are so useful for having some evaluation about trends in the territories. For example, you want to know what was in the past and what happened during the time in this territory. You can use different free satellite images, and also you can buy some of them. Different images such as Spot, Landsat, WorldView, GeoEye, Sentinel, and we have lots of satellites that are preparing maps with high resolution to low resolution, and you can use them. And also you can use some of aerial photos that are so helpful for trends in the territories. And also when you want to print these satellite images and use it in the community to do P-mapping in the scaled format. Or you can use drone photogrammetry. This is a new, very new technology. You can have very high resolution maps, but you have some limitations. One of the limitations is about the drone set have problem with the battery, because it just take in the best position it's about 20 or 25 minutes. You can have flight with that, and in my experience I think that it's better to have, if you want to cartography a very big area, it's better to have information and to delineate all the area, and you want to show the problem in very specific area. Then you can use drone photogrammetry. For example, you have 5,000 hectares your territory, and some mine company comes to your territory and they want to have, they are saying it's just 5 or 10 hectares that we want to use for the mine uses. So it is important when you are showing all the territory, and then you are emphasizing on that small area with drone, and prepare a very high resolution maps, and also you can have the 3D model maps and use it for advocacy about territory. As an example, when we are talking about territory and ICCA, for example, in Iran that we are working, you can see here This is a wintering ground of one of the tribes of my tribal confederacy, which is Qashqai Tribal Confederacy. In this area, the community, when they are they have gathering and working on the maps, they are preparing this area as their wintering grounds, and also we have their summering grounds. So they want to have some way to go from their wintering grounds to their summering grounds. You can see here their migration routes. Some of the tribes going from this way and some others going from the other way. In some situations, such as maybe the roads are snowy, or maybe there is some problem in their migration route, they are changing their routes and using the other way. And also, these are different layers that we can use for delineate territories. And also we have some stopovers or midway stations that community have when they are migrating. Maybe for some of the communities, it's we have some communities that their migration route are so short, it's about, for example, 50 kilometers, or for some of them it's about 700 kilometers, and they need some stopovers to stay 1 night, 2 nights, or in some cases more than that, to go from their wintering grounds to their summering grounds. And also some other layers that we are using are the invasions and incursions in the communities. This is something that you can use for the trend maps, that what was in the past, what was the ancestral domains, how is the territory in this situation in present days, and also what we want to have in the future, that I will explain it later. Also, the other layer that in some of the territories we are using, it's the official protected areas or former protected areas. Some of the communities mentioning the protected areas as some invasion in their community, but some others they are mentioning as a very important conservation area in their territory. It depends on the different communities. These are different layers that we can prepare, and also we have lots of other layers such as ecosystem assets of the territories, about different vegetation types, different rangelands area, for example, poor rangeland, or dense vegetation rangelands, or different type of ecosystems that they have in their territory. And these are coming with different layers and in GIS ready base to the maps. You can see one of the layouts of the maps that we are preparing. This is the community that I showed you. This one is the one of the tribes, and the other one is the other tribe of the one tribal confederacy. This is the Qashqai Tribal Confederacy, and you can see the nested ICCA. This is the big ICCA, and also some nested ICCAs into the big ICCA. This is the tribal confederacy, and also some tribes in it. Nowadays, PGIS become a widespread form of contour mapping, enabling local communities to make their own maps and models, and using these for their own research, analysis, assertion of rights, and also their conflict over land. And all often reversing power relations with the government organizations, politicians, and corporations. The power of participatory mapping is also being amplified by the opportunities offered by the internet, or some in the international level. For example, we have different platforms that you can bring your ICCA maps from local level to the national, regional, and also international level. Nowadays, we have lots of platform in the international level to visualize the ICCA maps, and also to advocate for the maps, and some movement that we have about the territorial mapping. For example, we have ICCA registry that I don't know that Jess from ICCA registry is there or not. If she's there, she can explain more for you. And also landmarks that visualize the maps in the online platform, and you community can have their own maps and own ICCA on it, and it is useful for advocacy and also for recognition of the these maps. I mentioned some of them, but the purposes that we can use participatory maps are for empowerment of indigenous peoples and local communities. The very much important factor is that the process of doing mapping is much more important in so many communities than only maps, the maps itself. Because when you have this process, the empowerment of the communities that happen during processing the mapping and also working with communities. And also this is so helpful for the community to secure access to land and natural resources. And also it's in my experience, it's that the overcome of the feeling of destitution and hopelessness in the community, and the community members thinks that they can bring their own maps to the table to negotiate about their land and territories, and also to advocate for their lands. And this is the maps that the own community prepared that, and they know about every element of the maps that delineate. For example, it's some points, some polygons, some lines, and different symbols and different things in the maps. They are so useful because community thinks that these maps prepared by them, and also they are bring their mental maps and mental information, and also their knowledge that comes from chest to chest to their younger generation. They are bringing it, and the maps is speaking, and you can negotiate. This is very important point. And also it's really important. The main uses of the maps, it's for advocacy. We are prepaid because maps have power, and this is something that can work, because when the technical persons comes to doing something, the first thing that they have is the map. When they are working on the ground, they are working about land and territory, they have maps. So communities should have their own maps to advocate for that. And also, I mentioned about ancestral domains. You can have the maps of ancestral domains. You can have the ecological services of the territory, and also the area that you belong to. These are some new methods that coming to the participatory mapping and participatory GIS about ecological services or land use planning. We can have these maps in the participatory way, not by some consultant and some technical person to prepare that maps. And also for territorial boundaries, and also we are using for transboundary conservation, and also some territories in transboundary areas. We can have the cultural participatory mapping, and we can use it as a cultural way. For example, when I mentioned about mapping in different groups as a cultural view, as a cultural perspective, the men didn't mention about sacred sites in their territory, but sorry, I told men, yeah. And the women are one of the first things that comes to their mind about the geographical understanding of their territory is the sacred site. And this is so useful for the cultural maps. And also trend that I mentioned it, and also it's useful for conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is something, sometimes it's some conflict in the community, and some other times with community with the others, outsiders. And also these type of maps are so important for the mapping of food security and food sovereignty in the communities. When you have the perception of the territory and the importance of the different aspects of territory, it's very useful for mapping food security and food sovereignty. One of the things that I want to add is about the facilitator. The success of participatory mapping and participatory GIS much depends on the behavior and attitudes of facilitators and who controls the process. This is very important for the community when the facilitator knows what he or she wants to do, and they can exchange their knowledge. The facilitator bring his or her technical knowledge, and also community brings their traditional and indigenous knowledge, and they all comes together, and when they combine, we can have very precise maps. And when the community can see the passion, enthusiasm, and interest of the facilitator, this is so helpful for both to have the best map of what they want and what is the need of the map for the community. And the other thing that I want to mention is about the information that are in the maps, in the participatory maps, are the knowledge of the community. And so the different civil society organizations that are working with the communities, they should respect to the intellectual property rights of the knowledge that comes to maps. And also we should have the FPIC for doing that. For using it in the, for example, in the international platform, or use it in different subject, in different places, we should have the community's FPIC, because this is the knowledge of the community. And also we believe in the ICCA Consortium that we as indigenous peoples, we should map our territories before it is mapped by others. I think I will finish it now, and if there is some questions, and I think it will be very good to have some discussion about this.
Thank you so much. I'll actually take this opportunity to take you to my own screen because I would like to share with you this ICCA Registry webpage, because it's always useful to understand how it works. So this is the ICCA Registry, iccaregistry.org. And here you can find many case studies. So it means communities that actually made this mapping process, made this analysis of their own community, and they are just sharing it. You have here a manual on how to get into this registry that requires you to make a peer review process inside of the country in order for ICCAs to validate other ICCAs, because in any case communities are the better place to actually understand what are ICCAs. So you have many tools here, and actually I would like to take this opportunity also to take you to our own website, the ICCA Consortium website, that is in 3 languages. Here you can see that the languages can be shared. For those of you that don't know it already, but I'm sure that many of you already know it, we have 2 sites inside of our website. The left side is dedicated to ICCAs and resources on ICCAs as such, and the right side is dedicated on the organization, the ICCA Consortium organization, that is a movement of ICCA that actually is turning out to be an organization. On this side, you can understand, like find a lot of resources that are videos. I will not go through all of them, but that are videos or documents as such at the local level, regional and international level. And in this part, you can understand how to take action. And actually among them is register your ICCA. And this first act of registering your ICCA is actually based on how do you manage to map it and how do you start with participatory mapping that Ghanimat just explained us. So you can find more information here on the ICCA registry, and here even connect with the WCMC, the World Conservation Monitoring Center of the UN, which is the UN body that will explain to you how to actually register. And to know a little bit more about ICCAs and the ICCA Consortium, please visit our website or simply write to us. All the informations and links are in the description of the video here below. Thank you very much.